Did you know that Australia now holds one of the highest household debt levels in the entire world? That's right, the average Australian owes nearly twice their annual income. And that's just the beginning. Imagine waking up in 2025 to skyrocketing mortgage payments, empty storefronts in your local shopping centre, and a job market that's rapidly shrinking. Sounds extreme? Maybe. But according to a growing number of economists, it's not only possible, it's already starting. Australia, often praised for its stability, strong banks and rich natural resources, may be on the edge of a major economic collapse. A perfect storm is forming. Crippling debt, rising interest rates, global trade tensions, climate disasters, and a shrinking middle class are all quietly brewing behind the scenes. And yet, almost no one is talking about it. Could the lucky country run out of luck? What happens if our biggest trade partner cuts ties? What if the housing market crashes harder than it did in the US in 2008? And most importantly, what does it mean for you, your family, and your future? In this video, we'll uncover the 10 shocking reasons why 2025 might be the year Australia's economy takes a turn for the worst. We'll break it down in simple terms, backed by facts, not fear-mongering. But make no mistake, what you're about to hear could change the way you think about your financial future. Stay till the end, because it's not just about what's coming, it's about how you can survive it. Number 1. Crippling household debt. You might not see it on the news every day, but Australia's household debt is now one of the highest in the developed world. In fact, for every dollar the average Australian earns, they owe nearly $2. Let that sink in. That means families aren't just borrowing for houses anymore. They're using credit cards, buy now, pay later schemes, and personal loans just to stay afloat. Groceries, school fees, power bills, it's all going on credit. And with interest rates rising fast, that debt is becoming a crushing burden. But why is this so dangerous? Because when people owe more than they earn, they stop spending. And when people stop spending, businesses suffer. Jobs are lost. The economy slows down. It's a domino effect. And Australia right now is dangerously close to tipping that first domino. According to a recent study by the Bank for International Settlements, Australia's household debt-to-income ratio has soared past 190%, placing it among the top 3 globally. This isn't just a red flag, it's a blaring siren. To make things worse, many Australians are locked into huge mortgages they could barely afford even when rates were low. Now, with interest rates climbing, their monthly repayments are doubling or even tripling. Mortgage stress is rising fast, and so are loan defaults. This isn't just about numbers. It's about real families falling behind, struggling to keep their homes, and cutting back on everyday needs. And if this continues, it could be the spark that lights a much bigger fire across the entire economy. So ask yourself, how much debt is too much? And what happens when millions of people are forced to answer that question at the same time? Number 2. Rising interest rates and mortgage stress. Interest rates are rising, and they're rising fast. The Reserve Bank of Australia has increased the cash rate multiple times since late 2023 in an attempt to tame soaring inflation. But in doing so, it's putting millions of Aussie homeowners under intense financial pressure. Let's break it down. Just 2 years ago, you could lock in a mortgage at around 2% interest. Fast forward to now, and some homeowners are staring down rates of 6% or higher. That might not sound like much, but for a $600,000 home loan, it could mean an extra $1,200 to $1,500 per month in repayments. That's the equivalent of a second rent, or in some cases, more than a family's monthly grocery budget. Now imagine that kind of financial hit happening across the country, all at once. That's why experts are sounding the alarm on mortgage stress, a term used when a household spends more than 30% of its income just to pay the mortgage. According to the latest data, over 1 in 4 Australian households are now under mortgage stress, and that number is climbing every month. This stress doesn't stay behind closed doors. It leads to defaults, forced home sales, and declining property values, all of which can create a chain reaction that affects banks, investors, and the broader economy. And let's not forget renters. Landlords facing higher mortgage payments often pass on the cost, pushing rental prices through the roof. So whether you own or rent, the pressure is building. And if rates continue to rise in 2025, we could be looking at a housing crisis on a scale Australia has never seen before. Number 3. Over-reliance on China. Here's a fact that might shock you. China accounts for nearly 1/3 of Australia's total exports. That means if China sneezes, there's a very real chance that Australia catches a cold, economically speaking. For years, Australia has relied heavily on exporting iron ore, coal, gas, and agricultural products to China. These industries bring in billions of dollars annually and keep our economy ticking. But what happens when that flow is disrupted? We've already seen warning signs. In 2020, during a political fallout, China slapped tariffs and restrictions on Australian wine, barley, beef, and more. Billions were lost almost overnight. Now imagine that happening to iron ore or coal, Australia's top export commodities. If China reduces its demand or shifts to other trading partners, something it's actively doing, Australia stands to lose tens of billions in trade income. That could lead to massive job losses, factory shutdowns, and widespread instability in mining towns and port cities. But that's not all. China is also facing its own economic slowdown, with a struggling property sector, rising youth unemployment, and slower manufacturing output. This means less demand for Australian exports, even without political drama. So ask yourself this: what happens if our biggest customer stops buying? The truth is, Australia's economic over-reliance on one nation is a high-risk gamble. And if China pulls back in 2025, whether due to politics or recession, the impact could be devastating, not just for big corporations, but for everyday Australians who depend on those industries for work and security. Number 4. Declining real wages. Let's talk about something that affects every single Australian: your paycheck. You might be earning more on paper than you did 5 years ago, but here's the harsh truth: your money isn't going as far. That's because when you adjust wages for inflation, also known as real wages, most Australians are actually earning less than they were a decade ago. That means your rent is higher, groceries cost more, fuel eats up your wallet and your income. It's not keeping up. According to data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, real wages have been falling steadily despite nominal wage increases. In other words, you may be getting a small raise, but your purchasing power is shrinking. And it's not just happening to low-income earners. Middle-class families are feeling the squeeze too. This decline in real wages isn't just a personal issue, it's a national economic threat. When people have less disposable income, they spend less. And when spending drops, businesses suffer, leading to lower growth and fewer jobs. It's a vicious cycle. Worse still, younger Australians entering the workforce are facing wage stagnation, job insecurity, and sky-high living costs, making it nearly impossible to get ahead. Many are turning to multiple jobs, side hustles, or leaving the country altogether for better opportunities. So even if the economy is growing on paper, if wages don't grow in real terms, the average Australian falls further behind. And when a large chunk of the population is struggling just to survive, economic collapse stops being a theory and starts becoming a reality. Number 5. Agricultural disruptions. Australia's farms have long been the backbone of the economy, feeding millions at home and across the globe. But in recent years, something alarming has been happening. Nature is no longer playing nice. From record-breaking droughts to catastrophic floods and bushfires, Australia's agriculture sector has taken a beating. Crops have failed, livestock has been lost, and entire regions have gone from thriving to struggling in just a few seasons. And in 2025, this trend shows no signs of slowing down. Climate experts warn that extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more intense, directly linked to climate change. For farmers, that means unpredictable growing seasons, water shortages, and skyrocketing costs to maintain production. For consumers, it means higher food prices and supply shortages. But the damage goes far beyond just what's on your plate. Agriculture contributes over $70 billion to the Australian economy every year. When that output drops due to floods or droughts, it sends shockwaves through regional communities, export markets, and transport industries. Let's not forget biosecurity threats. Pests and diseases are also rising, affecting crops and livestock, The recent mouse plagues, fruit fly outbreaks and soil degradation are just more nails in the coffin. And here's the scariest part. If the land can't recover fast enough, farming becomes unsustainable. That means mass job losses, rural poverty, and long-term damage to the nation's economic structure. So yes, the weather may feel like a daily inconvenience, but behind the scenes, it's disrupting one of Australia's most vital economic engines and pushing us closer to a very uncertain future. We've poured days into research, writing, and editing to bring you this insight-packed video. Now it's your turn. Share your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe with just one click to support more content like this. Number 6. Dependency on fossil fuels. Australia has long been known as a mining and energy powerhouse, with massive exports of coal, gas, and other fossil fuels feeding economies around the world, especially in Asia. These industries have brought in billions in revenue, created jobs, and powered cities. But here's the problem. The world is changing, and fast. As global demand shifts toward cleaner, renewable energy, Australia's dependence on fossil fuels is starting to look like a dangerous addiction. Countries like the US, China, and members of the EU are aggressively moving away from coal and gas. Even major corporations and investors are backing out of fossil projects, putting their money into solar, wind, and hydrogen instead. That means Australia could be left holding outdated resources that fewer and fewer countries want. And there's more. Nations are beginning to introduce carbon border taxes, penalties for countries that export products made with high emissions. This could make Australian exports more expensive and less competitive, hurting trade relationships and reducing demand. Meanwhile, back home, the refusal to transition fast enough is already causing friction. Energy prices are rising, aging power plants are failing, and renewable infrastructure is still playing catch-up. So what happens if fossil fuel demand collapses before Australia is ready to pivot? We're talking about lost export revenue, regional job losses, and economic chaos in mining-heavy states like Queensland and Western Australia. The writing's on the wall. Those who don't adapt fall behind. Australia's fossil fuel reliance isn't just an environmental issue, it's an economic time bomb. And unless we act now, we may be investing in a future that no longer exists. Number 7. Retail apocalypse and shifting consumption. Walk through any suburban shopping strip or regional mall in Australia, and you might notice a growing trend. Empty shops, for lease signs, and once bustling areas now eerily quiet. This isn't just a coincidence. It's part of a deeper problem known as the retail apocalypse. The traditional retail sector in Australia is struggling to survive. High inflation, rising interest rates, and surging rent costs have left consumers with less spending money, while businesses face higher overheads. Add to that the explosion of online shopping, and you've got a perfect storm. More Australians are clicking Add to Cart on websites instead of walking into stores, and many small and mid-sized businesses simply can't keep up. Since 2023, hundreds of retail outlets have shut down, and not just the mum-and-pop shops, national chains have gone under too. Once thriving shopping districts are turning into ghost towns, especially in rural and outer suburban areas where foot traffic has dropped dramatically. And it's not just about shopping, it's about jobs, especially for young Australians and part-time workers. The retail industry is one of the country's biggest employers, and when stores shut down, thousands lose their livelihoods. What's replacing them? Not much. Online giants like Amazon dominate the market, but they don't employ nearly as many people locally. And with automation on the rise, even warehouse jobs are at risk. As spending habits shift and the retail economy crumbles, we're not just seeing a change in where we shop. We're witnessing a major breakdown in local economies. And if this trend continues, it could strip away a critical layer of Australia's economic resilience. Number 8. Brain drain and youth migration. What happens when the brightest minds of a country decide their future lies elsewhere? That's exactly what's unfolding in Australia, and it's called brain drain. More and more young, educated Australians are packing their bags and heading overseas, chasing better job opportunities, higher salaries, and more affordable living costs in places like Canada, the UK, and parts of Europe. And who can blame them? With housing prices skyrocketing, stagnant wages, and a cost of living crisis, many young Aussies are struggling just to make ends meet. Despite getting degrees and entering the workforce, they're finding it harder than ever to afford a home, start a family, or even save for the future. So they leave, and they're not looking back. But here's the real issue. When these highly skilled individuals leave, Australia loses more than just people. We lose talent, innovation, and future leadership. The economy takes a hit because fewer skilled workers means lower productivity, slower tech advancement, and less entrepreneurial activity. It's not just the private sector that suffers. Public services, including healthcare and education, are also feeling the pinch. Rural and regional areas are especially hard hit, where young professionals leave and don't return, creating gaps in essential services. Meanwhile, Australia's immigration intake, which once offset this loss, has slowed in recent years due to stricter policies and global competition for talent. If this trend continues, Australia risks becoming a place where the old stay and the young flee. And that's a dangerous imbalance for any economy, because without the next generation building, innovating and contributing, who will keep the country moving forward? Number 9. Weak small business support. When we talk about Australia's economy, big industries like mining or banking often steal the spotlight. But here's what most people forget. Small businesses make up over 97% of all businesses in Australia. They are the backbone of local communities, powering everything from cafes to trades to digital startups. And right now, that backbone is breaking. Since the pandemic, thousands of small business owners have been fighting to stay afloat. They've faced supply chain issues, rising energy costs, wage pressures, and now crushing interest rate hikes. Many were already in survival mode, and 2025 is looking even bleaker. According to recent figures, over 1 in 5 small businesses are at risk of shutting down in the next 12 months. Why? Because they're not getting the support they need. Government aid has slowed or dried up entirely, and banks have tightened lending. That means less access to cash, higher risk of bankruptcy, and fewer resources to adapt or grow. And when small businesses close, it's not just an owner losing their dream. It's employees losing jobs, communities losing vital services, and the entire economy losing its most dynamic and diverse engine of growth. Worse still, large corporations are swallowing up what's left, offering prices small businesses can't match, but without the same personal service, community investment, or local jobs. In short, when small businesses fall, everyone feels the impact. And if the current trend continues, Australia could see a wave of closures that will hollow out its economy from the inside out. Number 10. Government debt and policy paralysis. Australia's government spent big during the pandemic, and rightly so. Billions were poured into stimulus packages, business support, and healthcare systems. But now, the country is left with a massive bill. National debt is expected to exceed $1 trillion by the end of 2025. Debt isn't always bad, if it's managed wisely and used to drive growth. But here's where things get worrying. Despite this growing mountain of debt, Australia lacks a clear plan to dig itself out. What we're seeing instead is what experts call policy paralysis, when governments are too divided, distracted, or politically cautious to make the tough decisions needed for real reform. Tax reform, housing affordability, energy transition, innovation investment, all urgently needed, but rarely acted on. The result? A nation that's spending more, earning less, and drifting without direction. This lack of leadership has real consequences. It makes Australia less attractive to global investors, slows down critical infrastructure projects, and leaves everyday Aussies paying the price through higher taxes, reduced public services, and fewer opportunities. And with an ageing population, growing healthcare needs, and the global economy in flux, the clock is ticking. Without bold, forward-thinking policies, the weight of debt could become unbearable, dragging down future generations with it. So while Australia's problems may look financial on the surface, they're deeply political at the core. And if the people in charge can't step up soon, the economic collapse won't be about what we couldn't afford, but what we failed to fix. After everything we've covered, rising debt, falling wages, a fragile housing market, climate risks, and weak leadership, you might be wondering, is Australia really heading for an economic collapse in 2025? The answer? It's not guaranteed, but it's dangerously possible. The truth is, these issues aren't isolated. They're interconnected, forming a fragile web that could snap with just the right pressure. And when that happens, it's not just numbers on a screen. It's jobs lost, dreams delayed, families hurting. But knowing what's coming is the first step to being prepared, not panicked. This video isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because if we ignore these warning signs, we let the collapse happen to us. But if we act now, we have a fighting chance to weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side. So let's talk about how. While we can't control global markets or political decisions, there's still a lot you can do to secure your future. Here are some practical, powerful steps to help you prepare. Cut unnecessary expenses. Create a realistic budget. Prioritize needs over wants and track your spending monthly. In uncertain times, every dollar counts. Start small. Aim for 3 to 6 months of essential expenses saved. Even a few $100s can act as a safety net when things go south. Don't rely on a single job. Explore freelancing, part-time gigs, or online businesses. Extra income streams can protect you if one source dries up. Invest in learning, whether it's tech, healthcare, finance, or trades. Skills that stay in demand will give you more job security and mobility. Keep up with economic news and local policies. Knowledge is power. The more informed you are, the better your decisions. Help strengthen the real economy. Spending local keeps jobs and money circulating within your community. Vote, speak out, and hold leaders accountable. Economic change starts at the top, but it's powered by people like you. We put a ton of effort into researching and creating videos like this, so if it sparked a thought or taught you something new, drop your take in the comments. We read everyone. Don't stop here. Watch our previous video for even more eye-opening insights. Support us by hitting that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.